Welcome to the Wayne Bennett Podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to Wayne Bennett's podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Bennett, and it's November the 4th, 2025, and this is episode 177. It's a cold, brisk November day, and it actually is the day to make common sense, I guess is what the expression has been. But our guest today is described as an eccentric entertainer, a singer, a musician, artist, a prolific writer of songs, poems, and novels. Thank you for coming, Ron Brunk.
It is great to be here, Wayne. I'm just so thankful that you had me on. You've got a great thing going on here, and I'm glad that I can be part of one of your episodes.
Well, let's start out. I noticed in one of your discussions that you mentioned a grandfather who had owned a beer distributor, or did you come from a wealthy family?
Well, that's a good question. I guess we were okay. We were comfortable. That during that time period, while my grandfather was still alive, we were pretty. You would call us middle America, but a little. I don't have a good answer. You took me by surprise with a question like that. Good, I like that. Yeah, we were okay. We weren't, but now that changed shortly thereafter. Yeah, during those days when I think back on I was born in '58, and I think back on the '60s, being a kid, and I lived with my grandparents. My mother and I lived with my grandparents when I was a boy, because my real father went off to be a rock and roll star and travel the world, and which he did his thing. Yeah, living with my grandparents, he was a big wig in West Virginia, beer distributing for
Wow.
Pabst. Can I say the names? Pabst and Black Label. And I spent a lot of time as a boy, when I was really little, climbing up on the pallets of beer in the warehouse. And, that was like, my mom would take me with her because she worked for him some of the time as a secretary at the distributing place there. It used to be out on the 1921 bypass, what they used to call that, I guess. I don't know if they still call it the 1921 bypass or not. And then later it was up on Dry Hill Road. But I used to go there.
What was the family, your mother's family's name? Was that Wilkes?
Oh, Rolls. You mean?
Rolls.
Yeah. Henry Rolls was his name.
Okay.
And his brother was J. Rolls at J. Rolls Floral. Yeah, Henry Rolls he was quite a man. I loved my grandfather, and
You say your father left you early. Did you ever have a relationship with him later?
that's a big story. Yeah, I did not know anything about him really, because he left when I was like not even 1 year old, so I didn't really know much about him. And at one point, he called me up. Sometimes he would tour, and he would come be in the general area. And once he called me up, and I was living in Daniels. I guess I was about 14, and he called and said, "Hey, it's your dad." This was at night, late at night. "It's your dad. I wanted to talk to you." And I was like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah." I just thought it was one of my buddies, one of the guys, acting stupid. We used to make prank calls back in those days, And I said, "Yeah, okay, sure it is. Thanks for calling, Dad." And I hung up the phone, And he called right back, and I said, "Yeah," And he said, "This is your dad. Don't hang up." And I was like, "Yeah, sure it is. Okay, Dad, it's good to hear from you." He called back a third time, and I answered, and he said, "Don't hang up. This is your father. It really is. Please let me talk to you." And I was like, "Okay, what's going on here?" It was so out of the blue. There was no warning, nothing. I hadn't heard from him. Well, I hadn't heard from him. And he was in town, and he wanted to know if he could see me. And so he talked to my mom, and she said, "Sure." He said, "I'll come over and pick him up." And he took me. Do you remember the Joey's El Cid Club? Remember that place?
Oh yeah.
He was playing there, that just coming through town, and they were playing some shows at Joey's El Cid for like the weekend or something. And he took me over there to his room, and he had like a singer, female singer that was, they sang duets and all. And I met her, and I stayed there for a few hours and talked to him, and he gave me some money, in an envelope. It was like $500 or something, because he felt guilty, it started then. Whenever he would come around, which might have been once a year, and he'd be nearby, and he'd give me an envelope with $300 or $400 or something, So that was kind of cool, for a young guy, 14, 15, 16 years old when that was happening. But yeah, he was always like some up on a pedestal, because I wanted to be a musician and a writer and all that. And there's, my dad, traveling the world playing music, and he was great. He played in some of the bands around here before he left, and the Teen Tones was a band that he was a part of, and I've seen some pictures of. I have some old recordings. There's so much I could tell you about my dad, but
Teen Tones, was that with Peanut Holly and that bunch?
Yeah, and Chris Sarandon, I think, was Sarandon. In it. I can't remember the other names.
Ulaki, there was a Ulaki guy. I remember that group.
That was my dad. And
your mom remarried, and I've heard two different things. I heard one time you described your relationship with your stepfather, that he would verbally abuse you sometimes and those kind of things. And then in another discussion later, I heard you describe him as a very good man. And you kind of got choked up in that particular description.
Well, you've really been digging. You checked out a lot of stuff. That's great. My relationship with him was, what can I say? It was a long, winding journey. So in the early days of my life, when I was a boy and a teenager and a young adult, I couldn't stand him. I hated him, especially when I was young. I just hated him because he was more, I'm artsy and emotional and all the things that go with being a creative person, and he was very, militaristic, he didn't understand it. He didn't get it. He didn't, I have a family full of hunters and, and outdoorsmen and all of that, but I wasn't that way, but he was. And my half brother is, and that's great. I wasn't into that. I wasn't interested in that. So we could never find any reason to be, to get together. And he was not an outgoing, especially I'm talking about my younger period of my life. He was not a touchy-feely, in those days, I used to say that he never touched me except to whip me, which was only a couple of times, and I deserved the whippings, he said a lot of things because it was just his way, but at the time I didn't understand, I thought, how could you be so mean? And, he was just being a guy, but I was a little sensitive boy, wanted to be a writer, I couldn't understand how you could say mean things I can't say on here. He just seemed to rejoice in getting me to cry. That kind of thing. And I'm talking, 8 years old, 9, 10, even up in my teens, and then I just had such a resentment for him.
But you had some normalcy on your child. I mean, you played, boys, they played backyard football and little sports like that. So when did you get interested in music?
Well, let me just say about my stepdad, Naaman. That was the early days, and I want to make clear that as I grew up and became less of a, starry-eyed, foolish kid, and understood more about real life, I understood where he was coming from. He had a hard upbringing, and there was reasons why he was the way he was. And don't get me wrong. And again, since this is going to be, I want to make clear, he was a good man, and he didn't mistreat me, except if you say verbally. You know, I, there were plenty of nights I cried myself to sleep. Why do I have such a mean? He's so horrible. I hate him. All that. And he could be pretty rough, but he didn't like hit me and he didn't. He provided for us, and I had a good middle American life. Okay, so I'm not trying to paint him as some terrible person. He wasn't. He was a good man. As I grew up, I came to appreciate and understand him. And, eventually, at one point, I guess I was in my late 30s and I had health problems, and that's a whole other story that led me to then have to, when doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong, they said, you need to go see a counselor. So I went to a counselor, and through that process of 3 years of therapy, I came to understand more about my stepdad. And at that point, I made a point. I went to him. I went over to his house out in Grandview, and with the express, he had no idea, but I had the express purpose. My goal for going there that day was to tell him that I loved him and to hug him, which we had never done in our lives. There I was, late 30s somewhere. I could look in my journals and say what exactly when it was, but all those years, and I went, and it was so awkward, but it was wonderful. When I was getting ready to, we talked, I visited with Mom and him, and then I said, well, better get going. And he was in his recliner, and he stood up. And I said, Dad, I kind of went over there slowly, and I said, I just want to tell you that I love you. And, I never said that before. And he said, well, I love you too, Ron. And I was like, I reached out and we hugged. It was the first time in our lives. And that was
as easy as that sounds. Back in those days, I mean, it's so hard for somebody that, like in his case, to say I love you. He probably never told hardly anybody that in his life. But
and for me, from that time forth, everything changed, and we talked a lot. We became close, and that's the part. That's why I know the video you're talking about where I got sentimental, and I left it in intentionally because I wanted in that video I wanted to say it, and I wanted the world to know, and that was real. We became so close, and especially we became closer after I moved to Nashville, because he was a huge country music fan. Loved everything about country music. And he used to make us listen to the country music stations in the car, and he'd turn it up. He used to make us all sit down on Saturday night, and I think it was Saturday nights, and watch Hee Haw and the Porter Wagner show. Oh, I hated him. I just hated it because that was me. I was a rock and roller. I was so anything to be the opposite of him, and I hated that country stuff. And it was just so. When I moved to Nashville and I started meeting some of those people and hanging around them, he was. I used to call him from Nashville all the time. Say, Dad, you won't believe who I was just talking to. He loved talking about all that. It was like the first part of life with him was so difficult, and then the last part was so wonderful. That's why.
That's great.
We built a great relationship, and I mean, I talk about him all the time, and I find myself saying so many of the expressions that he said. I didn't realize what an impact that he had on me. And some of the ways I say those same crude kind of off the cuff things that to me they're just normal.
Yeah.
My wife will say, "Why'd you say that?" I said, I don't, just because I heard it 10 million times growing up.
Well,
it's just funny. Oh, you asked something else, and I went back to.
Yeah, how did you get started into music?
Oh, well, I was so into it as a boy, and I was writing poetry, and I was drawing. I was doing all kinds. I got, when I was in the third grade, teacher called my mom in to talk about something I had written, just wanting to tell her that I showed talent and that she should nurture it and pay attention. And in the fourth grade, it happened again with another teacher as I moved from grade school to the elementary, moved up, and another teacher called her in. And then there were, so I was very artsy, but I didn't have a way to play music. And I was just stupid. I could have said, hey, Mom, Dad, would you buy me a guitar? I just, that didn't dawn on me. But my dad, my real father, called me and at one point back there in the mid-teens, when I was in my mid-teens, and said, I got something for you. And it was a guitar. He wanted to give me a guitar, so I'd never had it. And it was an electric guitar, one that he had played a lot on the road, one of his guitars. So I had this electric guitar, and he gave me the guitar and a Mel Bay chord book, if you're familiar with Mel Bay. I've got it in the car because I brought it with just thinking that might be something you'd be interested in seeing. It's all, ratty, falling apart. I studied those chords hours a day on my electric guitar, which, as you know, without an amplifier, you can't hardly hear you can't hardly hear anything. You have to. So I would lean down there and I would try to, D, G, and I would just practice for hours a day, learning all the chords and trying to understand what I was doing. And then my uncle Johnny Rolls, if you ever crossed paths with him, he gave me an album that he was going to throw in the trash. Because he said, this is a piece of crap. This guy can't sing. He's a joke. It was Free Will and Bob Dylan album. And I said, well, I'll take it. And I listened to it. As soon as I heard the first track, the answers are blowing in the wind. I was like, this is something. So I suddenly, I had a guitar. And along about that same time, I got that album from my uncle. And it all clicked. It was like all these poems and these stories and everything I've been writing, all these words. Dylan just took all these interesting poetic words and he just, basically 3 chords and made songs out of them. I mean, that's like the light went on. I was like, well, I could just do that. And that's how it started because of those things right there.
Now I remember you had said that you would skip classes sometimes in high school and go to the library and read classics.
Oh, yeah.
Was there any teacher or anybody in high school that might have inspired you some, or were you just floating through? Or
I went to Shady, and Jane Comer. She was an English teacher there. That's an easy answer. Bless her heart. Last I heard, she was in Florida. Connected with her. We emailed a few times, but that's been several years ago. But she was a tremendous influence, and she stayed after school and helped me, typed up some of my lyrics and had told me that I had talent and that I should do something with it because I was an outcast, dope smoking, drunk all the time, wore my big ratty huge army jacket. Just I was a mess, and she would tell me you need to focus on your art, and she helped me every way she could, like that. So yeah, her.
I remember seeing something, and this was later, but it was a newspaper anthology. You had written something, a poem. It was called "Things We Fear," I think, and then something else you wrote later was Search of the Unoffended Americans. That was, I don't know whether you remember those or not.
Yeah, I hadn't, I'd forgotten. I think that was, became a part-time newspaper columnist and writing these days. Yeah.
But one of the things that in doing a little bit of research that you always considered Robert Frost as one of your favorite poets, and a quote that Robert Frost is one of my favorite poets, and I had never heard this one, but you're talking about ideas, I guess, but this is a Robert Frost quote. It starts with a lump in your throat, and that lump in your throat finds its thought. And you'll take that thought and it finds an expression in words. And I thought that was a beautiful portrayal of writing. But I'd read somewhere where you even at a very young age you had written 400 or 500 songs. I mean, you had just a prolific writer even as a youngster. And when did you start trying to perform in front of people or performing?
Trying is the key word right there. Trying to perform. I well remember my first performance. It was for the family at a family reunion gathering at, I guess it was, I'm trying to remember which great aunt it was, which home, but it was right off Harper Road. I can't remember. But I well remember the Brady Bunch outfit that I wore. I looked like I have a picture of it somewhere. Ridiculous, like 19 whatever it was, it's one of those outfits. Anyway, I remember trying to perform, and at that time I was trying to do All Along the Watchtower by Dylan because I loved it so much. And they said, Ronnie wants to play the song for us, and I tried, and it was epic failure. I have terrible memory when it comes to forming. I can't like remembering the words, remembering the chords. I get it's an anxiety thing. I battle anxiety and panic and all of those depression, all those sorts of things. Been battling that my whole life. So that's another whole thing. But but here's the thing about that, about performing. It's quite a mystery to me that I've never been able to figure out. I've been in front of a lot of crowds. I preached, for several years. I ministered, in churches and at rallies and youth group meetings and, whatever, all kinds of things. And I was part of a project with Beckley College where I would go and, give presentations before hundreds of people, like in Pittsburgh and Morgantown and the energy, Department of Energy locations.
Well, let's go there a minute. You graduated from high school.
Okay.
And you were working. You worked for Caperton's for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you got. I guess that was you were like a cartographer type. How did you learn how to do that stuff? I mean, and then you were making presentations in front of coal shows and stuff. I mean, how did you learn all that stuff?
I don't know. Let's see if I can. In a nutshell, after high school, I worked at Acme Supermarket for almost 10 years, and that's great. I loved it there. Great friends. It was a good job. I loved the people. I have nothing but good things to say about that. And there's nothing wrong with working at a grocery store. But some people around me would say, because you didn't make a lot of money, and I had 3 little children, a wife, and we were dirt poor. I mean, we were dirt poor. I drove an old Subaru that was held together by duct tape, rusted out. My life has been blessed by God richly, and so many fortuitous things happened. I worked there, and one day we played football. Some of the gang from the store, football game that I set up. We played at the park, junior high at the field over there. We met on a Sunday afternoon and we played. Very first play, because I was the ringleader of it all, because I used to be a really great football player. And this was, I was almost 30 years old, and I was playing with some of those guys were, 18, 19, and they were big guys. Very first play, the kickoff, I said, I got it. I'm going to show you guys, how to play football. That was the idea, and it was in my head. I started streaking through, and somebody blocked. Fellow, I don't know if I should name his name, dear friend. He went up in the air, big guy. He went up in the air and came, as I was doing this, he came down on my right shoulder, and my left ankle snapped. This was the opening kickoff of this big game, Acme football game that I had set up. Snap. And my foot was sticking out to just like you follow football now. Scatterbow on the Giants, the ankle, the foot sticking out to the side, and and I'm looking down and it's like, that's not supposed to be like that. Anyway, the point of this is that changed my life because I was settled into that groove of going to work at Acme, and struggling to get by and all that. Not doing more with my life. And again, I'm not knocking working in the grocery store because I loved it. Okay. So I'm not trying to belittle that. But for me, there were other things I needed to do, but I couldn't get out of that. People would say, why don't you go back to college and study this or that, do something, why don't you. So we broke my ankle and I couldn't work it was pretty bad. I couldn't work for 3 months. And I sat at home and I thought about it all. And that's when, it hit me. This is a chance. This is a change. This is, a very precise moment in my life that maybe I could do something different. As I sat at home with my leg up in the cast, and somehow I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go to Beckley College. I'm going to study something else. What do I study? No idea. Somehow somebody said, you should study computers because, that's the new coming thing. You could start now and be in the front of it. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And I'm like, you got to have a keyboard. I don't even know how to, type, So I started practicing typing. I applied. I, got all set for that fall because that happened in the summer, the late summer. So I got set up to start in Beckley College studying computers. And I got in on the ground floor of there and became, like a helper with, I was a work study student and working with computers. I learned everything.
And that was when computers were like
just starting. Yeah.
Just getting.
Yeah, just starting to have personal computers. And they were starting to get a few in the college in some of the offices, but they knew, the people that, that were in there. I don't know if you ever knew Bob Lilly, who was the president of the college at that time, Robert Lilly. He didn't know anything about him. So he was on somebody, and my personality is, let's go. If we're going to do something, I'm going to do it 100%. I'm all in. I will work tirelessly. I'm just, my work ethic is you do everything right 24/7, 365 days a year, and you strive for perfection in everything. That's my personality. And I'm trying to make it, condense it into a short story. All it amounted to was I got to be the go-to guy at the college for computer stuff over the course of a year or 2 years, And then one day Bob Lilly was having lunch with Austin Caperton at Foster's, and Austin mentioned that he was going to start a new business, a mapping business for the coal industry and so forth. I wasn't present for this lunch. This is what I've heard from them. And he said, I need somebody, you got somebody over to college who's a go-getter who can kind of jump in and I could kind of guide him and we can make this business work. And Bob said, I know just the guy. And he told me, he said, would you be interested? Yeah, later he talked to me and he said, would you be interested in this job opportunity with Caperton? And I was like, sure, okay, let's go. What is it? He said he wants you to come and meet him and go to his office. It's just right down the street, 300 North Kanawha, so it was walking distance. So I went for an interview, with Austin, who is a great, great man, and I love him dearly. What a blessing to my life he has been. But I went in there. It was funny because I wore a suit and tie, I was all fancied up. I was like nervous. This is like the governor's cousin, and I'm just intimidated. And he was in, jeans and tennis shoes and had his feet up on the desk. He was totally, like sweatshirt. He was totally casual and super nice. And I was thinking, well, I'm way overdressed for this, And he talked like we're talked about life for maybe an hour. We talked. And he said, okay, well, when can you start? And I was like, I told him, I said, don't I have to fill out an application? Like, don't you need? And he said, no, I know who you are. I got you. And I understand what kind of person you are. I think you're the right person. Okay. but I don't know anything about mapping and, GIS systems, geographic information systems. And he said, you'll learn it. I'm like, okay. That was it. And so like the next day or two, I went in and he started saying, okay, here's your stuff, here's your equipment, and here's the manuals. And I just dove in. There were many times that I stayed there. I'm sure much to the chagrin of my wife. I was there 24 hours. I would work night and day. We'd have projects. We had to get these maps out to the big coal company because he dealt with all the big. He was friends with all the heads of all those coal companies. I mean, I'm generalizing. I don't say all of them, but a lot of those guys were his friends. He worked with them before, and so they were the clients, and we were producing these big wall maps, huge. You would put on the wall, showed all the properties and coal earning, where the processing plants were, all that kind of stuff. So I would stay there and work just tirelessly. I would sleep there sometimes for a while. Like he had a nice office and he had a little couch there. I'd work, be printing maps, and I'd just lay down, nap for a little bit, and then get up and keep going. Those were, and at the same time, I was still working for the college. So technically, I was working 40 hours for the college and 40 hours for Caperton, but actually it was like 60 and 60, a lot of the time.
Were you still trying to perform a little bit at that time, or?
No.
Okay.
No.
You worked down at when Austin Caperton bought Raleigh Hardware. You worked down there a while, didn't you?
Say that part again.
At Raleigh Hardware. Did you work down there not Raleigh Hardware, Beckley Feed and Hardware? Yeah.
That's another funny story. My great uncle Sid Lyric. Did you know Sid? Did you ever know Sid? He's owned Beckley Feed and Hardware. And I wasn't close to Sid, but I knew him. I would see him from time to time at get-togethers with family. What a great guy. I mean, a wonderful man. But one day, this is how Austin was, because I'd come into the office, that you just never knew, because I just love his personality. I love the way he does things, and he taught me so much. But I'd come in sometimes, and like that particular day, he said, I was getting ready to do something on the maps. He said, we got something new. He said, I bought a feed and hardware company, yesterday or whatever, and I want you to go down there and assess it and kind of look at the office situation and the computer stuff, what they got, how they're doing things, and he said, just kind of, help me move it into, more into the future, because Sid had been doing things the same way for 80 years or whatever it was, because he lived to be like 101 or something, and he was working up until 90, I don't remember the exact numbers on that, but so Sid was, I didn't even, until he said it's Beckley Feed and Hardware, and we went down there, and there's Sid, my great uncle, and like he sold it to Austin. I never even knew that they were even talking. I didn't know Sid was trying to sell. I didn't know that Austin was wanting to buy. I would come into work and he would say, "All right, I bought this, and let's go do this." He did the same thing with a water analysis laboratory, and it would just be or stuff like that. You'd think you're going in and I'm going to work on this, and he'd say, "Nope, we're going to go somewhere and do."
It wasn't boring. It wasn't predictable.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. We went in one day, and this is when Larry and had another fellow working there, and Austin said, "Oh, we're going to the Green Bar and play golf." And I was like, "Okay, I've never played golf, and I'm not a fan, but all right, So we went and played golf, and and they explained things as when I beat both of them, and they were mad. They were not happy about that. He's probably not going to appreciate me telling it now. But then we played again, and because I had beginner's luck, and I did.
The very first time you played golf was on the Green Bar?
Yeah. And the second time we went to the Green Bar again, and I was a complete disaster. I couldn't. So it was totally beginner's luck. It was a miracle. And then the next time we played, I was chopping big clumps of dirt. The ball was going over there and over there. I mean, it was like what you would have expected from someone who never played golf and knew nothing about it, you know. So that was a pretty fun event. I'm getting off track here. I don't remember what I was supposed to be
Well,
telling you.
you made the Larrick family. I worked for Gene Larrick at Coca-Cola plant, and he was a great guy, man.
You worked for who?
Gene Larrick.
Oh, Gene Larrick.
Yeah, and then I worked, and then my father worked for the Capertons at Slab Fork Coal Company for years, and always spoke highly of the whole Caperton family. You know, he was a coal miner. He was a section boss, but he always thought the Capertons were outstanding bosses and owners and those kind of things. But and sometimes you don't get that when you own corporations. You know, people that
true.
work for you.
That's
but
true.
You had 3 kids. I know I had Megan in class when I was teaching at Park. I'm not sure about Michael. And Ashley, I don't either. I'm not sure about her, but I know I had Megan in class, and great kid, good student. But you were actually married and divorced the same person 3 times, weren't you?
Yes,
And
that's true.
and your kids, after they graduated, they went in. All 3 of them went into the military.
Well, Ashley and Mike did. And Megan married an airman. She lived that life, you know, she all over the world with him. Yeah,
What kind of relationship do you have with your kids now?
oh, fantastic. I am so richly blessed. And I say all the time, you know, in my prayers, you know, thank you for my wonderful children. And please, you know, I pray that God will bless them, continue to bless them richly, because they're far better people than I ever was or could be. They're great human beings. They got, and I've said this a million times, they got the best of whatever's good in me and whatever's good in their mom, they got it all. And I can't say enough good about Ashley and Megan and Mike. They're fantastic people, and now to see them being fantastic parents and you know, just living great lives, you know, I'm so blessed and so thankful. You have to cut me off.
Well, she wouldn't. I remember one time when she was in my class that they had a picture of your family with some other volunteers, and you guys had worked some kind of a cleanup or walk as a family. I think C&P Telephone might have sponsored it or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was a picture. Megan and her brother Michael, and then you and your wife, and then they had some other volunteers around. But I'm not sure what that fundraiser or volunteer service was, but you know, it was. But they were very young at that time. Now you mentioned one of your heroes as was Bob Dylan. I'm sure you've seen the movie that's out, Bob Dylan's movie.
I have not.
Okay.
Not yet.
It's decent. You know, I mean, they all can make improvements, but he has a son named Jake. He's got several kids, but I think he's got one son named Jacob that's doing quite well in the music business too. And but one of the quotes from you is, "I may not have great success, I may not have any success, but I do know that I was born to write songs," and that's from you. and you have really touched on it. I mean, you've written, hundreds. Have you ever kept a record of everything that you've written?
At one point, the last time I tried to, it's tough to really count them because I have so many boxes of old lyrics, you know, and I have so many tapes of all through the years, like I have an 8-track, you know, going back all the way there, and I have tons of cassettes, and I have the little mini cassettes when that was a thing that a lot of people were doing. And then now I've got on phones and on hard drives. And so I've got all these digital copies, and I've got all these paper copies stacked away in tubs and boxes, and even some of the ones, the oldest ones, are in a safe, for safekeeping. But I estimate it about 16,000 probably. And
That's great. That's amazing.
And this amazes me because I never really, I didn't set out saying, well, I'm going to remember every song, you know what I mean? But I can look at a lyric sheet like it's something, from 1974. And it's, it'll be a song like that. I've never felt that when you're writing a bunch of songs, some rise to the top, and these, you think this is really good, you think this is really this is magic, I'm going to record this. And then you've got others like, well, they're all, maybe if I work them a little bit. And then you got some down here like, well, okay, those aren't, they're not that good. They're never going to, there's, the bottom stuff's like, well, okay, that day I thought maybe that was interesting lyric, and that, I came up with a melody, blah, blah, blah. And my point is, I can pick up a lyric sheet from 1974 and I can, in my mind, I know, I can sing, I can remember the moment, writing it, and I can hear that in my head.
Wow.
And even though it was something that I may not have looked at for years and never going to record, never, no one's ever heard it except me, but I can still remember, that how it goes. And that amazes me because, my memory's so bad. I don't understand. And yet it's like there's a section of my brain in there somewhere where all those are stored away. And but then it comes to the performance.
It's funny how you certain things you can remember, and then some things you should remember, but you don't.
Yeah. That is so true. That is so true.
Do you write music? Do you write I know you do the songs and the melodies. Can you read music and write music?
I can.
The technical.
But I don't want to do it. It's too much work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've had people say, would you notate, do that song for me or whatever. And I'm like, if you paid me a lot of money, maybe. It's like, why do I want to do that? But lots of people are into that. Again, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, for me, it's like, here's something about me and my real father. I'm a writer. There's nothing greater in this world than you're sitting here and all there is the air. You're sitting alone, and then all of a sudden you feel the lump in the throat, the passion, you start to cry, and you grab your guitar and it flows from somewhere out, and you can't write fast enough to keep up with what's coming. That is the most magic moment, and that's what I'm all about. It's the creation. I write a song, and if it's great, I record it. I do it as fast as I can. If it's really great, I make a music video about it really fast, and then it's like, okay, now I'm writing the next song. That's, like Windowsill Cat, this video just came out yesterday, and I need to stress that. People need to watch that great video and listen to that great, inspiring song. But it came out yesterday, the video. It's now past for me. Right now we're working on a song called Not Dead Yet. And that's the next thing that I'm really excited about. Not Dead Yet's so funny, it cracks me up because with my health issues, for years, I complained, I feel so bad, I hurt, I'm near, 1 foot in the grave. I've said that a million times, I can't, how much longer can God going to let me go on? And, like my buddy Paul Allen, the guitarist, I've known him ever since I moved to Nashville, great, super guy. But he's told me many times, he'll say, when I'm complaining, we'll be on the phone now, we're talking. And I'm in, it's like, it's 3:30 in the afternoon and I'm in bed because of the pain. He's like, you've been saying, as long as I've known you, that you feel bad and you're dying and look what all you've done and you'll be fine tomorrow. And he'll say, you're not dead yet. Or we'll kick that back and forth. We've been kicking that back and forth. And not just with Paul, but with lots of people. Well, I'm not dead yet. And I say this, I could go at any minute. I'm not dead yet. And I thought, just a few weeks ago, I was like, why have I never made that a song? So I sat down at the piano, and again, it was one of those magic moments. I sat down, all I had was Not Dead Yet, but I could go at any minute. And it just instantly, boom, I don't have to think about it. I don't think about, okay, what chords, what's the melody going to be. It's the same thing. I keep doing that. The same thing with the guitar, the same thing on the piano, and the piano's better. It's just like my hands instinctively go, wherever. And for that song, it's G minor, and it's B flat, and it's C, and it's D minor. You got this groove going, and it just immediately, boom, and started singing it. It's just, I hate to say channeling because I don't, but I don't know what else to call it. It just magically comes from God, I don't know. And the song came just like that, and I was like, oh, this is so good. This is so good. I'm like, I love this song. And what's one of the things that's cool about it is the ending. It's like, I immediately could hear, some girls in the back going, because it's all tongue-in-cheek fun, the song. Hear them going, he's not dead yet. He's not dead yet. But then he could go at any minute. And the song fades. Intentionally did this. Then the listener's like, oh, it's over. He's not dead yet. Then it comes back, immediately, and then it does it again and it fades. He's not dead, To me, that just I do things that amuse me, and that's why I do sometimes a lot of dumb things and crazy things, and people say, what's wrong with that guy? Because it amuses me. It's funny.
It's kind of strange because I usually sign off on my podcast, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet.
That's
and,
good.
From the very beginning, it's not mine originally. I borrowed it from somebody, I'm sure. But now let's go back here. You got back together with your wife, and you two sold your houses. You went to Nashville, and you're going to, there's thousands of people that go to Nashville to make it big and get in the musical industry. Danny Bailey, a local friend, once told me that, and he's very experienced at doing that. He said there's a lot of people in Nashville that will take your money if you want to go down there and pay for what you think is going to get your dreams started. What was your experience when you went to Nashville? That's a big step, I mean,
Oh man, we could do 10 podcasts on Nashville, but I will tell you that when I first made that decision that I was going to walk away from Caperton Energy, it was not easy. And like I've said, I love Austin dearly. I mean, what a blessing he was to my life and still has been. I can't say enough good about him. But I just knew, my kids had just graduated high school, and it was time for me to finally do what I was meant to do. And, I don't want to, I want to answer that question, talk about that. But I will say, when I was 17, 18, one of my best friends and I were making plans. We're talking about going to Nashville as soon as we got out of high school, as soon as we left Shady. And he was especially the driving force, this old friend, and about doing that. And I was drifting, kind of, that's where I was at. I didn't know but I thought, that sounds like, I guess we could do that, My point being, it's the same old story. Then I met a girl, that thing. And that's when I met Rhonda. And it was magical, wonderful. And so suddenly I had...
Life gets in the way.
Yeah, he was like, we're going to Nashville, all right? No, I don't think so. I'm not going to do that. And, for long we were married, and... for long we had kids, and I had the job at Acme, and life on, and my friend was a little bit perturbed with me for a while, but we made up because we had met in the ninth grade at Shady Junior, and we were friends for a long time. Anyway, where was I trying to go with that? What was the original question? So I can pull it back together.
Well, when you got to Nashville, what was your first?
So the thing was, I'm just saying that I was going to go to Nashville at 18, and it took instead, when did I go? Well, I went there in 2001, so however old I was then, 42. So from 18, it was delayed, and I don't regret, obviously the life, the children, the love, all the wondrous events of life, and in Beckley, and that's all wonderful. But it was like at 42, I guess somewhere in there, I was finally going to let the creative part of me come forth. So I had to leave Caperton. So I told, this is funny to me. There was a guy at the college. He was one of the head fellas. I guess I can say his name. I love this guy. He was always good to me and very good. Jim Solosky. Did you ever know him? He was one of the head. Dr. Polk was there, and Jim Solosky. But I remember him that I told him that I'm leaving Beckley and I'm going to Nashville to write songs, and that's what I want to do. And he said, yeah, and I want to play middle linebacker for Pittsburgh Steelers, but it ain't going to happen. And that's pretty much a direct quote, because I never forgot that, So I moved to Nashville with that mindset, having that in the background, leaving all of this behind, being told, and my biological father said, because he knew all about the business, the entertainment world, he said, you better get ready. He said, there's a lot of snakes and demons and liars, and he said, and it's tough. He said, you're moving from, you're a small town boy, you're with a good heart, and you're going where there's snakes and vipers, and it's a big business, and they don't care about your sweet little songs, and it means so much, and they're gonna eat you up. So if you're gonna do it, you better get tough, So all that was my background moving to Nashville, and I learned quickly. I thought, because I'm so passionate and my heart's out on my sleeve, as they say, I'm open to my creator God, to the universe, to life, to art. It's all about that for me. I don't care about money. I don't care. If I make some money, then I could give it to my kids. I could help people that need it. I can help save some precious kittens and rescue them. And what do I need money for? I don't care. As I always say, as long as I got a chocolate bar and a Dr. Pepper, I don't care. I don't need a bunch of stuff. So I go to Nashville, and I know I'm rambling too much. I go to Nashville, and I quickly learned that it is a machine. And I have a song and a video out on YouTube. I think I have both a long and short version of the song called "The Big Machine," and it's about that. It's exactly about that. And if you listen to the lyrics, it's using the imagery of the big machines. I've got a lot of in the video. It's got a lot of and bulldozers and end loaders, tearing stuff up. That's the Nashville music business machine. That's the entertainment world. They don't care what here's the thing. When you're an artist and a writer who truly cares about the art, you do wake up at 3:00 in the morning with your heart bursting and tears flowing, and you write something, and if you're old enough and you've seen enough, you can know this is magic, this is good. And you write that, and then you think, I can't wait for tomorrow morning to get in the studio and record it, and then go pitch it on Music Row in Nashville to try to get somebody to record it, a big artist. That's the whole thing about songwriters in Nashville. You're hoping to get a big name artist to record your songs. That was my purpose for going to Nashville, to write songs and sit at home and get a royalty check. I said that many times, But you write something, and then you put what little money you have into recording it. It's blood, sweat, and tears. It's your life. And you beg, you call Sony, and you call RCA, and you call Curb, and all the record companies, all the publishing companies on Music Row. You call them, you email them. This is the experience that every songwriter has, most songwriters have, in Nashville. You call and you go there and visit and you talk to people and you try to get to see somebody. You try to get a meeting and you try for months for that song that you wrote in the middle of the night that you know is so good. You finally get a meeting with an A&R person, some publishing company or whatever, big one, middle level, whatever it is. You finally get it. This is the day. You dress, you look cool, you feel good. You take your CD. Back in those days, you took a CD in, and you meet with the A&R person, and it's some 24-year-old girl who just graduated from Belmont in her music program, and she, because of whatever particular reasons, got her spot in the A&R department. And so she's the gatekeeper of listening to new material to decide whether or not it's good enough for any of their artists on their, on RCA or Sony or whatever, whoever. And you sit down, you're like, oh, this is it. And she puts it in the CD player and starts playing, and she plays it for 20 seconds and she pops it out. So that's not what we're looking for. Wow. That is the crushing moment when you're thinking, she knows nothing. She's a dumb kid who just graduated. I knew it to be the case in many cases. And I had that happen numerous times, and it happened to my songwriter friends. And honestly, most songwriters and most songwriter friends can't even get those meetings. Because I was older and wiser and came from a business background. In my early days at Nashville, I carried a briefcase. I went on Music Row and I cold called and I knocked on every door and I talked to every person with kindness and open heart and learned about them. I studied all the magazines to find out memorized who they were and what they were, what their interests were. Oh, they liked golf, they play tennis, they've got dogs, they've got a horse, you know what I mean? So you could make conversation. I did everything. No one worked harder than I did to get that big hit song. I telling you, no one did. And I came really close, but it didn't happen. I never got. I told everyone in Beckley that my friends. I said, all I want to do is go there. I'm a great songwriter. I can write country stuff all day long. I could write 100 country songs a day, every day for the rest of my life for 100 years. There's nothing to it. I said I'm going to go and I'm going to write some country songs. Some big names are going to record it. And I'm going to get a royalty check in my mailbox. That's all I want. That's all I want. I don't want to be a performer. I don't like to perform. I have panic. It makes me uncomfortable. You know what I mean? I don't want to do that. I don't want to live. When I'm totally rambling, I know. When I met Paul Allen, the guitarist I mentioned earlier, and he and I instantly clicked and became friends. His goal was to get with a big name act and play guitar and play, he told me, play 365 nights a year all over the world. And I said, my goal is to stay home and get a royalty check from my songs that I have written that other people are doing. We couldn't have been more opposite in that regard. I want to play everywhere. I want to play nowhere. That, but he's a very strong, dynamic personality and a great guy, brilliant. He's genius level, in my opinion, in just his general personality, and especially in music. He's a genius level creative person musically. We fit just right in that regard. And he was like, he used to teach guitar over there in Nashville on Demumbrian Street. And he'd make me come on over here. We're going to practice some of your songs. Because he'd listened to my early CDs. And when he went, and I knew. That's a funny thing about that. The first night that I met him and heard him at the Bluebird Cafe, Rhonda and I had just been in Nashville for 3 days. And everybody said, did you know Dick McVeigh?
Yeah.
Dick's the reason he was like the primary one who influenced me. You need to go to Nashville. You're good. Dick said, you need to go to the Bluebird Cafe as soon as you get here. You need to go on Monday night. And so I went, and there was this kid up there playing guitar for this girl. And I was like, he's amazing. I never seen anything like it. So I'm just 3 days in Nashville. And I'm like, never seen anything. I'm looking up at this stuff. I'm like, I can't believe this guy. Then somebody else got up, and another singer, and he played guitar. He was a hired gun, so to speak, playing guitar for these different people. Not all of them, but for different select ones. I'll never forget, he played, the one that really got me was he played for Kathy Ross And she was the girl who had beaten Leanne Rimes in Star Search like the year or two before. And Leanne Rimes went on to have a great career. But Kathy, who actually won Star Search, she didn't have that success. But Paul was playing for her. And after that was over, I made a point through the crowd. I got to Paul and I said, I just moved here. I'm a songwriter. And I see you play for different people. And I need a guitarist, because I'm not very good. And I want somebody to play for me. And he said, you got any CDs I can listen to? And I said, yeah, I got, at that time I had made 4 CDs and I went to the car and got them. I said, here, he said, I'll listen to them tonight and I'll call you and tell you what I think. And the next day he called me. He said, this is Paul Allen. We met last night. I can't say exactly what he said on here, but he said, I listened to all your CDs. You're messed up. He said, let's get started. But he used more choice language than that. Because my records are pretty crazy and wild, and that was it. We met like a few days later and started. And he said we need to form a duo thing. It just kind of evolved. We didn't it wasn't like I put it that way. He didn't say we need to form a duo. We just started practicing. We just started doing. He's like, listen to what I did with your song, off of your Deep album. I did this with it. And you like that? I'm like, that's cool. He said, sing it. And I started singing it. Before I knew it, we were practicing all the time. We were doing several of my songs. And then we said, let's play some shows. I'm like, okay. So I just kind of got dragged into it. And we played different places. And we even did the infamous show here in Beckley back in like 2004 at the Soldiers Memorial Theater.
Was that the Retro Vertigo?
Yeah, that's it. Oh, man. That's a good example because of how I am. That was a great success, and the performance was fantastic. Everything was wonderful, and lots of people came, and it was a great blessing, and it was all wonderful. The people came from all over the country, and I was with my wife Tracy by this time. That was 2004. When it was over, I was so devastated and exhausted because of my anxiety and panic and social difficulties. I'm not good with crowds, okay? Yeah. Which is a bad thing for someone who's got to perform. But like when I used to preach, the night before and the morning of, I would throw up. I was throwing because I was going to have to get up, in front of people. But I had to, because God was telling me to do it. And this is, when you get in these situations where you're performing, I was devastated. I'd build up to that performance. And that's what gets me. Some people perform night after night after night. That was just one performance out in the, stuck out in the middle of nowhere, time-wise, and I was devastated. Tracy had to help me to the car and take us to our hotel room. She had to drive and take us. She had to help me in, and I laid on the bed, curled up, shaking after that concert. Oh. And, not even being able to think, because if I had thought, I would have remembered. People, even my real father came all the way from Florida with some other people. He drove them up to come to that concert, my biological father. And other people came from other places to come for that show. Now, in my mind, I was thinking a good person would have then gathered them all. I said something to them at the end, as everybody was leaving. I did my best, then, I had to say something because they're right there putting their hand out, Yeah. But a good person would have said, hey, I'm taking all of you out for late, we're going to go to wherever, and I'm buying, and thank you guys, and let's, eat whatever you want. Get a steak, I'm buying, whatever. Something. I didn't do anything. Not because I didn't want to, because I couldn't. And I forgot to pay the musicians that came along. They deserved and they were supposed to get, somewhat, whatever it was. And
the business of Nashville, there's still people that go down there with great ideas and aspirations and stuff. But since then, and then you had success stories like Chris Christopherson, who was supposedly a janitor one day. Johnny Cash used one of his songs, and then they just went huge, and then you have like outlaw associations like that don't go through the the protocol with Nashville. They're out here, maybe not near as successful, but a lot of guys are making a living, singing and entertaining. Tell us, I know you've had a lot of health issues, and of course that's a whole new podcast. But tell me about besides the anxiety, you had some other situations, very serious near death situations.
Yeah, and it's intestinal bleeding that unexplained. I mean, there's a lot I could say about that, but it's a difficult topic. I mean, it's like a lot of blood.
Did they ever find out?
No, and the thing, it's happened 4 times, and 4 different hospitals, 4 different GI staffs, and the head of the GI division at Vanderbilt and at Skyline and in Nashville. They all told me after being in the hospital for 3, 4, 5 days and undergoing all these tests and getting blood transfusions and all the recovering, getting my strength back and going through all the tests of every type they could think of, then to meet for your discharge to have the head of the GI department say, well, we don't know what happened. We don't know why. We don't know what caused it. We can't find any reason. I mean, one of the guys told me, he said, it's happened now 4 times. Means odds are, he said, I don't know. Odds are it's going to happen again. Oh, okay. Thank you, for that. He said, try not to eat as many nuts and seeds. That was it. Now the Lord has been good to me. It hasn't happened. I don't want to knock on wood because of the microphone, but.
Well, I've read your book. About mysterious illnesses, and
oh man,
and it explained the all the experiences, and it was a very devastating time. It's kind of strange that at the end you listed some mysterious illnesses that people have, and I actually have Meniere's disease.
Oh, do you?
And it's I've been through a lot of stuff in my life, but I never went through anything like that, and still haven't, but it's not as bad as it was. But it literally laid me up for about 3 years, and worse, I would never wish it on my worst enemy. I mean, it was absolutely terrible. And now that I know the triggers, what triggers reactions, I'm pretty good about getting out of there and getting away from them. And
what triggers it?
My triggers, and that's another thing. What makes Meniere's disease mysterious is it varies with different people. But my triggers are smoke, cleaning supplies, and perfume. And I cannot take. I will pass out. I will get sick. I will throw up. I'll lay in the bed for days. If I get a whip, and it's really, I used to go into bars and stuff, but I never smoked, but smoke never bothered me. But then if I'm around a little bit, I'm just talking about a whiff of smoke. Bam, I can feel it. And some people that have Meniere's disease, like caffeine, messes with them and stuff. But it's just and there's no cure. There's no even, if you've got heart disease or cancer or something, at least you have something to kind of battle it. Meniere's, there's nothing to.
You don't know who you're fighting. You don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You're in a battle,
thing.
but you don't know against who or what.
Yeah, but I read your book, and I would recommend it to anyone that and it gets to a point. One of the points you made in the book is after a while people think, well, he's just faking, or there's nothing wrong with this guy. They don't understand. I've even tried to explain Meniere's disease to some people, and they say, oh yeah, well I've had vertigo. Well, this is more than vertigo. Yeah. I mean, vertigo is just a little piece of it. But I also read your book, Gravel Gold, and it's
I can't believe. I often forget, honestly, that I ever had that period where I wrote books. I mean, I really do. That's amazing. I can't believe it.
That was interesting because you've got this, and I don't give away everything, spoiler, but you've got this guy who is he's a huge star, a rock star, or stars, and he controls everything, and nobody can even the government or law or anybody can get to this guy. And at the end, I mean, I'm not going to tell you how, but he actually controls his death, to a certain extent. It's a interesting book, and
Wow, appreciate you saying that.
I enjoyed it. I really did. During this timeline, when were you a minister? You were a Baptist minister?
From about 78 to 87.
And got out because you kind of got disenchanted with religion, or what was the deal?
There was a lot of factors that played into that. That's a hard one to answer. Maybe at the heart of it was, with all the different things that happened in life, I think at the heart of it, at that time, as I've said, and maybe you've guessed, whatever I'm doing, I'm very passionate about it, and I do it all out. So I was very passionate about serving the Lord, and I still am. But I'm in a different season of life and a different mindset, and I've learned a lot more. But at that time, I wanted to be, I was on fire for God, as they say, and I wanted to save the world. And I lived my life, totally to do that, to spread the word of Christianity, that Jesus is the Savior. And you must know him. You must be born. And Jesus himself said, "You must be born again." It was his own words. You must be. And I was trying to do that, and I wanted to be the best man, the best Christian that the Lord could ever ask for. You know what I mean? I studied endlessly. I prayed. I fasted. I sought God. I mean, I'm talking, days at a time, fasting and praying, seeking to know. I wanted the Word of God. I brought my old Bible with me. It's out in the car. I keep it with me, all the time. I wanted it to I wanted to be immersed in it. I wanted to be a walking representation of the Lord. And I was going through a crisis personally on life and, everything, marriage.
Did you have your own church, or were you an evangelist?
No, I went around to different churches here in southern West Virginia, and I had the Christian band that I was in with some guys, and we went around ministering around the state and places like that, to youth retreats and rallies, and and so it was a mix of doing all those things. And I went to Appalachian Bible College for a couple years, 3 years. During that time. And anyway, the more I sought God, the more I had the crisis of faith, the crisis of my own life. It's like the truth that I settled on was that God is sovereign over everything. The buck stops there. Everything that there is, everything. If you believe in God and that he created everything, then he's responsible for everything. And I know all the conversations, the different theories and the different ideas and all of that go into that. But in my opinion, the buck stops there. And so as I prayed and sought the truth so passionately, I can't tell you how I sought the truth. Just crying, I wasn't like the Lord, like in the Bible, like Jesus prayed such that he cried and sweated blood. I wasn't, couldn't reach that, but I was pretty sincere. I was powerfully sincere. And it was like the truth that kept coming to me was God's in control of everything. And then I took that and I said, because my heart breaks for everything that's wrong, for every hurt, for every person that hurts, and for all this sorrow that I was going through personally, and for all of it all around. Every time an innocent is hurt, every little animal that hurts, every human being that hurts, all the wrong, injustice, the perversion, the corruption, the filth, the evil. I told the Lord, I said, I believe in you, you're my God and my Father, but I'm telling you right now, if my heart breaks for all of this, and I would do something about it if I could, and you're a God of love, and you could do something about everything, and you don't, I'm not very happy with you. I don't like that. And that's the same sort of crisis that many humans go through if they're thinking it through. I wasn't unique. It's always been people come to the place where they're like, why don't you fix things, God? I get that. That's where I was. And I just said, I told God in prayer, I said, I can't go preaching this anymore because I'm angry. You should fix things. How could you, if my heart breaks for all the hurt, how can you just, sit up there, and just say, well, too bad, I mean, I'm being completely honest and open here. That's exactly what I came to. And
But you were still a young man at that time, in your early 20s.
Yeah, I was in my...
One of the things that you have, I can understand now, till you were one of the first computer people around the area as far as at the college level. But one of the things that you have really used with your talent and your songwriting and your books and your poems is technology. And it's amazing the things that you can do now with technology.
It is. It's
and
incredible.
Especially as a creative person, and you have really taken by the horns. I mean, and I've watched some of your videos. And the ones that stood out, of course, I know now since we talked a little bit earlier, but some of the ones Mr. Hank. Well, when I first heard the name Mr. Hank, I thought you were going to talk about Hank Williams Jr. or something, and it was a cat named Hank. And then you have Molly Rules and Farrell, and it's yesterday you just came out with the Windowsill Cat song and video, and it's amazing. That is an outstanding. I mean, all of them were, but that one it shows you the orchestra, and you're playing different instruments, and it's fantastic. I've got a friend who was at a teachers meeting at the Raleigh County Armory in the small section earlier this year, and it was a cold, rainy day, and he was in the teachers meeting, and his wife was, and she looks out, and there's this little teeny kitten had crawled up on the windowsill, and it was trying to get out of the rain and cold, and it was just a little small kitten. And everybody was looking at it, oh, that poor thing. But nobody took any action did anything with it. And because there were some houses around, and some people thought, well, it may belong to somebody. Well, she came home, she went home, and she kept thinking about that cat. And she told her husband, she said, we're going back to the armory, and if that cat's still there, we're bringing it home. And sure enough, that kitten was on the windowsill. And so they brought it home, they warmed it up, and they decided to keep it. They actually put on Facebook for a while, if anybody missing a cat, looking for an owner, but nobody. And of course, I was trying to come up with a name, and I suggested Seal, like windowsill, or Anderson, like Anderson Windows.
That's clever. That's a good one. I like that.
They didn't like those names, but anyway, today, months later, they've still got the cat, and they keep it in the house. But it's kind of funny because it likes to sit in the window and watch watch the birds and outside life. But when I saw that, when I listened and viewed your video, the newest one, Windowsill Cat, I noticed that a lot of your songs and poems and stuff, you use a lot of similes and metaphors, but sleeping like a windowsill cat and those kind of things. But beautiful. I would recommend. And so There's actually a book out that a guy wrote about storytelling and plotting, and it's called Save the Cat. And a guy
Save the
named
cat.
Brandon Snyder has written that book. But you have used, you have almost 500,000 subscribers in your technology. That's a lot. That's a good following. That's a cult. I mean, they actually refer it to as a cult.
Finally,
How does that? Do you feel like you need to act a certain way, or whatever, when you got people following you? You just be yourself.
yeah, I'm just the same way I've always been. I'm just a guy. I am still, and I'm proud to say, I'm still the same naive, soft-hearted, kind person I was. I've always been. And I'll tell you, when I was in Nashville, I had an incident. To me, again, I go back to I think you should always be honest, 100% as much as you can, without hurting anybody, and you should always do your very best and strive for perfection 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for every single day of your life. And that's what I strive for, to be the best person I can possibly be and never be oblivious. I know sometimes I talk and ramble too much, and maybe there's a lot of things I wanted to ask you, but you're very good. You got me rambling on and on, but anyway, see, now what was I saying? I just automatically just do it. I don't try to play a game or be something. And that's one of the things I hate about Nashville and the big machine. Because when I went there, within the first couple of years, I had some offers to be signed. They look at you like a piece of meat. I had them tell me, look me up and down. And that's a good George Lindsay story, but that's another whole thing. But I had people say, you've got the look, we can do this and we can do this with you, and you've got material and we can craft you a certain way, and here's how we're going to present you. Here's the contracts, you have to sign the addendum at the back, all the pages of my songs that they were going to take control of, and they would take control of me and my songs. And in all cases, I made them angry, because I would come to the meeting and I would then read the contracts, look at what all they were saying, give me a pen, say, just sign there. I couldn't do it. I said, I can't do that. I can't be put in your box. And you're not going to say, we're not going to pretend that I'm this and that and put a facade on me. So I'm just not going to play that game. I'm just me, and that's all I want to be. I'm just me. I'm a mess. I'm a wreck. I say dumb things sometimes. I'm all about love and goodness and doing right, and I'm passionate about the art. I was born to write. That's what I do, and I'm not going to let anything take me away from that. The story I was going to mention is when I told my real dad that I was going to Nashville. Oh, I already mentioned that. But when I was there a couple of years, I was writing with a couple of Christians in the music business, and they had some success and some connections, and I was doing air quotes for everyone out there, Christians, and I played a dumb joke on a friend. It was off color, silly. Again, I do dumb things. It was just being funny. It was like we were a group of friends, musicians, and I played a kind of a dirty joke on, a nasty little thing. But we'd been doing that to each other all the time. But one of the girls was a diva, and she decided at this particular time she did not like that joke. And so she got angry. And the Christian friends in this little circle attacked me, wrote me off, cut all ties, trashed me, said horrible things about me. This was like 2005 or something. And I thought my life in Nashville was over, because, some of the connections I was building through them were now suddenly, they were going around talking trash about Ron Brunk, because this dirty little joke he played on his friend, So I told, I was upset, because one of these ladies that I wrote with and wrote some beautiful songs with, and she seemed so genuine and sincere, and she puts Bible verses on her CDs back in those days. I don't know what she's doing in years since then, but she was that kind of she was the play Christian. She was playing it to be, to present it to the world that way. There was no reality to it. And she cut me off, stabbed me in the back. I was devastated because we'd been very close, just as friends and as writing together, being very passionate. That was a heartbreaking moment for me, crushing. I remember Tracy and I, because a circle of friends suddenly cut us and were talking trash about us. And we walked around the house in a stupor for several days. And we were so upset. We were so brokenhearted. We couldn't understand what had happened. Why would they get, we joke around and stuff all the time. Why would they get like that over this? And the only explanation was that stupid diva. Because they do wacky things. People in the entertainment world are weird in general, period. I'm weird. Some of them are wacko. And you never know when they're going to go off, So, and I know this is going out to the world, but it's the truth. And she was wacko. Anyway, I probably shouldn't say any more about that. Maybe we should edit that out. No. My point is, I had a point. Called my dad, and I was so upset. I was crying because my world was falling down. The Nashville world I was building up. They're going to tell everybody, all the Music Rows, they're spreading bad rumors and crap. I called him, and he was down in Florida, I told him what happened. He said, I told you, they're a bunch of snakes and vipers. You are still, he told me that, he said, you are still the same nice kid from Bagley, West Virginia. And he said, if you're going to stay there and play the game and fight the fight, then he said, you're going to have to become, he used choice language, you're going to have to become a butthole just like the rest of them. Are you serious? Do you want to be a big success? Then you're going to have to be one of them. And you're going to have to play the game. You're going to have to be a jerk. And I said, Dad, I could never do that. And I won't do that. And, I went on. That was like 2005. And I just went on. And
what do you now with the technology and the videos and YouTube, do you make money?
No. A few $100s here and there. But the big machine makes sure that the little guy doesn't make money. It's a travesty. What they do to songwriters. Now, sure, I would like to be, I think I've created great art and put it out in the world, and it would be nice to be, it's nice to be recognized. It would be nice to have something monetarily come back, just because that would feel nice. It would feel right. But honestly, if I just have, I don't care. It's like a paradox. It would be nice to have something reward monetarily to say I worked hard. It's like having a job. You work a job, it's nice, and when they say, here's your paycheck, it just feels right, So when you spend your life creating art, and I've poured all of my being into it, and I couldn't even guess how much money into it over the decades. And, I knew a long time ago, would I ever recoup that? No. And apart from the miracle, that some video goes miraculous, 4 billion people in the world watch it or something, or that someone, the right person at the right time, as they always say in Nashville, it has to be the right person, the right time with the right song. If that all happens and you get a big hit by some big star, yes, you could get a big paycheck. Apart from that, you're just going to be, all these people out there doing what I'm doing, you're just scraping by, you get a few $100s, I'll see, I really don't pay attention. I'll see a deposit on my phone and say, you got a deposit, whatever, $250 or $400 or something like that every so often, come in for some of the services, streaming services, or the royalty companies of, I can't even think, because I don't pay enough attention to it. Finally, people kept telling me for years, part of it's my own fault. People kept saying, you got to get all the business side of your music taken care of. You got to get all your songs properly cataloged and have the ISRC codes and ISWC codes, and you got to have them registered with the MLC. The MLC is kind of new. I can't even. That's not top of my mind here because I don't really like that stuff, and I don't deal that much with it. I eventually hired a music administrator, and she puts all my songs into Sound Exchange and the MLC and whatever else there is. So there's so many steps you have to go through if you want to do it right. If you want to do the music, and we could do a whole podcast on doing the business side and doing it right, which I didn't do for years because I didn't even know about. I didn't care. I was an artist. I don't, and how that's how artists get ripped off. Singer, Elvis Presley and Colonel Parker, and all that, all through the years. True artists aren't usually thinking about that. They're thinking about their passion and their art. They're not thinking about, okay, let's crunch the numbers behind the scenes here, and let's get everything properly registered. Let's sign all the. I don't care. I want somebody, you do that for me because I don't want to think about it because it makes my head explode. When somebody starts talking about that stuff, you got to have these codes and you fill it into this blank here. Now, if you just go to this form, blah, blah, I'm like, please stop. No, I don't.
But it makes you vulnerable with the business world. I mean, when you get, especially if you get the wrong advice or someone trying to screw you over or whatever.
Yeah, you can easily get misled and trouble. But it wasn't until I finally hired her and did what I could on my end, getting everything properly lined up, that I started seeing any money at all. Before that, it was nothing.
How'd you end up in Shepherdstown, West Virginia?
In Shepherdstown? Well,
I've never been there. I've wanted to visit, but I've never been there.
It's a lovely little town, very small and quaint and just adorable. The college is there, Shepherd University, I guess it is now. I'd only been there once before in like 1981 or something. We had a foster daughter, and when she graduated high school, she wanted to go to Shepherd. She chose Shepherd. So I, loaded up her stuff and took her to Shepherd College. That's the only time I'd been there. Well, I think we went back a time or two. We went for her graduation. But, I wasn't really there to see Shepherdstown. So when my wife, my wonderful, sweet Tracy, when she was finally ready to retire from where she worked at the state of Tennessee for many years, we had to pick a place to retire. I'm not really retired. She is. And finally came down to, it turns out that all the kids and our grandkids and even a great-grandkid now are all centered or circle that area geographically. They're not in Shepherdstown, but in fact, one of them now is, as of a few days ago. They were all around there, so we were looking in that general area. And we were in Nashville, and this was we started 2 or 3 years before Tracy retired. We started prepping, because she's good about that. She's, let's think through where we want to go. We put a big map, huge map on the wall, and we crossed out, where do we know we don't want to go? We don't want to go to California. We don't want to go to, we had crossed out a bunch of states. We don't want to go here, for a variety of reasons. But we finally said, what the overriding factor is the kids, the family, and my origins here in Beckley, in West Virginia. I lived all over Beckley. And then, as it turned out, the 3 kids and their families were all there up here. I'm doing West Virginia, they're over here. Of course, to you, it's over here. The tip of the Eastern Panhandle. So we started looking. We were in Nashville. We'd come up for 3 or 4 days to the general region. We looked at Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, Eastern Panhandle, West Virginia, all that area. So we'd be somewhere closer to them than Nashville. And we'd come up there, we'd stay, we'd meet with a realtor, and we never could find anything. This went on for 2 or 3 years. We'd go up there, and finally I said, because Tracy was never happy, and I said, why don't we just look for land? And, I was kind of joking, and we'll build your house, Well, if that make you happy, And she's like, that's a great idea. I said, oh, okay. All right, I was kind of joking around, but, I don't know how to build a house. I'm cutting through trying to make it a shorter story, sorry. We'd come up several times. We'd stay in a bed and breakfast, and we'd go with a realtor, and we'd look. We started looking at land up in that area, and finally went up there one time, and the realtor, we were at the bed and breakfast, and the realtor called and said, hey, some property just came on the market, and we should go look at it. I think it's supposed to be really nice, and you want to go look at it? And so we're like, yes, you know. So we got in the car and we drove up there, and we drove. You know, it's exactly 2 miles from the center of downtown Shepherdstown, and went up there, pulled in right along the road, and it was a big lot. It was 4.2 acres, and it was like it was heaven. It had woods placed just right. It had a meadow in the center. It had some big rock outcroppings, those big limestones jutting up in certain places. It was picturesque, and we just stood there and looked at it, and we said, "We'll take it." I mean, it was just like that. It was like magic. It was meant to be. It's the most beautiful place. I'm so thankful. I'll start crying here if I talk too much about it. God has blessed us so richly, and you know, it's just that's the thing. You know, I've done so many dumb things in my life, and God has blessed me and guided me and protected me when I did so many stupid things. So we ended up in Shepherdstown, and Tracy was just like, when we first time we drove through and the main center of Shepherdstown is a four-way stop. And we pulled up there and we sat there for a second. She looked around. She said, "This is the town I want to live in." And that's when we started looking for land. And that's then right after that's when the realtor said, "There's this piece that just came." And it turns out this little community we're in had 10 lots way back in the 70s or something when it first started. I'm not sure about really all the history on that, but that's what I think I remember. They said it was like the 70s. Somebody got this little land, plotted little section for development, and they had 10 lots, and ours is the center one, and it's the big 4.2 acres in the middle, and the other 9 are like kind of other lots around it. And it turns out that this woman, her husband had bought the property long ago, 70s, and then at some point they divorced, and she got that piece of land, and she'd had it for decades and never. Now she was getting older, maybe her health wasn't, I don't know what the deal was. And she decided that I needed, you know, someone probably in the family said, "We need to do something about that lot." And she said, "Well, just sell it," you know. We happened to be at the right place. We were in town right when it came listed, and we immediately, you know, so it was just like she suddenly said, "That's it, I want to sell it." And we were there, boom, we bought it. And it was,
Did you build a house?
We built the house on it, and I should say Tracy built the house. You know, she's I was a typical guy when it comes to that. You know, it was it's a funny story because we met with our builder. You know, fast forward, we met with the builder, and we had the big meeting at their big long table in their office. It's all everybody's sitting around there, and they said, "Okay, well now tell us what all you would like to see and you would like to have in this house. You know, give us a picture of what you want, Tracy." And so she started. She had her notebooks and she had page after page. She was like going, "Now I want to have this, and I want to have this, and I want these rooms to do this, and I want this size of this, and I want these colors, and I want these kind of appliances of certain blah blah blah." It went on and on and on, you know. And I'm just sitting there. And after it finally finished, you know, like an hour, they said, "Okay, Ron, you know, what do you see in this house that we're, you know, what would you envision?" And I said, "Well, I need to have good internet so I can work. I want to have a great shower with lots of pressure, and like off that Seinfeld episode where the Kramer had the shower head that knocked him down. And I'd like to have a hidden room or, you know, like a man cave, and I can keep certain stuff because that's cool." And I stopped, and they said, "That's it?" I said, that's it. That's all I need. And that's a true story because she went on for an hour, and I just said like 1 minute. I said, "That's all I need." And they all kind of like did like what you kind of laughed. So, okay, that's it. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. When Tracy, I always told Tracy, I said, "Where was I when you met me?" You know, because we met in Nashville. I said, "Think back. I was in a crappy little apartment in the bad side of town because it's all I could afford. I had a little nasty twin mattress laying on the floor. I had a cardboard box turned upside down in the floor by the mattress. I had a $5 Target lamp sitting on it, and I ate cold green beans out of a can, and I had a cat." I said, what do you think I care about? Stuff. Again, it's the same. I'm born to create. I don't care, and she knows this. We've had this conversation many times, and she'd be like, "What?" You know how it is with husbands and wives. Like the wives say, "Don't you think this color would be nice here?" Oh, yeah, sure. Well, don't you? What kind of knobs you want on these drawers? I don't know. One that you can grab hold of. Well, don't you think these nice? See how these have 4 different colors and. Oh yeah, that's right. That's Tracy, and I love her for it. And here's the thing: the house is amazing, and it's beautiful, and it's huge, and we're just 2 people, and it's huge, and it's like, of course, all the family now, the kids all come over, the grandkids. It's great. So I give her all the credit, 100%. She was the driving force. She worked all her life and retired, and this is her dream home, and it makes me so happy. And the kids come over, and she's so proud of it all, and she should be. And mostly I stay tucked away in my downstairs office, my music room, with my piano and my guitar, and create songs.
That's
and
kind
videos.
of your man cave, too.
Yeah, that's the thing, the hidden room. When we had to start cutting some things for cost, the first thing I went was the hidden room with the secret door that you pulled a book out and the door open. All that cool. That would have been cool. That had to be slashed.
Ron, you once said, no matter what anyone thinks or says about us, we are a special, unique creation of God, and that's quite a testimony. And I want to thank you for coming and talking to me today. And we've got other things we could talk about. I'd like for you to come back sometime and share some more stories. And
we didn't even talk about George Lindsay.
What about George? Oh, what about George Lindsay? Tell me about George Lindsay.
Well, I can just tell you very quickly. And if we do this again, I could tell you a lot more. But one of the little jobs I had at the very beginning when I was scraping by in Nashville was as a courier. I would drive and deliver stuff to people all over the area for this guy, a great guy, Chuck. And so in the course of talking with Chuck, we talked about Andy Griffith's show, which I'm a huge fan of the Andy Griffith show. And I said,
For the people out there, George Lindsay played Goober.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I forget, probably a lot of people don't realize that. But so Chuck said, George Lindsay, he's a client of mine. Sometimes I have deliveries for him. And sometimes he needs to go to the airport because he can't drive anymore since he had a stroke. Because this guy had several couriers working for him. He said, would you want me to put you at the top of the list for whenever George needs something? I said, you betcha. So I went, he called me, Chuck called and said, I got... George needs to be taken to the airport. Can you do it? And I said, I'm there. I don't care what I'm doing. And so I drove down. He lived on the southwest side in Franklin. I went down there and I go to his door and I knock on the nice neighborhood. I look around, knock on the door, timidly. And nothing happens. I knock again. Nothing happens. I ring the doorbell. I knock. I ring the doorbell. I'm like, I do have the right house. I go back and I'm like looking. This is the right place. It's a number. This is it. And all of a sudden the door opens a little bit and he peeks out at me. And I said, "Hey, I'm Ron Brunk. I'm supposed to take you to the airport." He looks at me like that. And I'm thinking, what in the world's happening here? Because I recognized him. I knew then it was him. And he opened the door. And I started to say something else, and he said, and I'm standing on this little porch here, in his front door, outside. And he comes out on the porch, and he walks around me. He's looking at me like this, looking me up and down. He goes, and I'm just standing there. He goes behind me, and I'm thinking, what is happening? And he comes all the way around, and he comes to the front, and he says, you got a good look, Ron Brunk. I think you're going to do well. That was the first thing he ever said to me. And I just thought, this is going to be crazy. And it did turn out. We became friends, and he was a nut. And
really? He's not alive now, is he?
He died a few years back. And
I always remember he would do the impersonation of Cary Grant, Judy, Judy, Judy. Except he'd go, Judy, Judy, Judy. That kind of thing.
And what's one of the things I told him early on? I tried to not talk too much about all that with him. You know, I didn't want to be like, you know, a fan, just try to be friends, you know. But the one time I did say, you know, one of your lines is my favorite line from the Andy Griffith Show. And he said, I know, Judy, Judy, Judy. And I said, no, actually, that's not it. He said, well, what is it? And I said, you said, ain't you got a jack? And it was when what Andy had in the back trunk of the squad car. And when Barney was, I could go on and on about Andy Griffith. So we could save that for now. I know you've got to cut it off, and I could go on and on. Believe me, about Andy Griffith and
George. Well, next time you're on, we'll talk a lot about Andy Griffith and George Lindsay. But I do appreciate you stopping by, and I've enjoyed talking to you. And now you got a new follower. I'm going to follow you, man. I
appreciate that very much. Thank you.
And anybody else out there, I'd recommend that you. Tune in to Ron and listen to and watch some of his videos. And guy's got 37 albums and novels and everything you can imagine. Great, prolific and great guy, prolific writer. Anybody else out there who'd like to be on our show, you can contact me at awbennett50@gmail.com and we'll get you on there. And until next time, remember, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet. And this is Wayne Bennett, and God bless you.